Have you ever realized the title you built your whole life around, teacher, nurse, entrepreneur, no longer fits who you're becoming? If that sounds familiar, you're not alone. I've lived that identity shift myself. I left teaching, rebuilt from scratch, and now I help others do the same to find out who they really are underneath the roles they've played. Welcome back to Becoming Unbound. I'm Carly Butler, and I help freedom minded humans break free from old identities, stories, and systems so that they can live the life that they desire and on their own terms. Today, I'm joined by former music teacher turned coach, Coleman Flentge, the founder of the Uninterrupted Life. We're talking about the bittersweet process of letting go of the titles that once defined us, the guilt that comes from leaving the noble career, and the beautiful rebirth that happens when you finally ask, "Who am I without this label?" So, my friends, stick around because by the end of this episode, you'll feel seen, supported, and maybe even inspired to release the old version of yourself and step into the next chapter of your unbound life. Let's dive into this amazing conversation. All right, Coleman, welcome to Becoming Unbound. I'm so excited to have you here today. And I wanted to jump right in and sort of start your story, how we met each other in the
Mhm.
world of podcasting in the year of 2025. It's kind of fun and wild. So why don't you get started with sort of how we found each other?
Absolutely. And thank you so much for having me on your podcast today. I'm very excited to be here. I'm just getting into the world of podcasting. And so having the opportunity to connect with you has just been a wonderful experience. A little bit about me and how we connected. I am a former classroom teacher. I taught music for nearly 10 years. I spent 4 years in elementary education and spent 4 years in high school education. And through a series of events, that I'm sure we'll talk about later, I just realized that teaching was not the path for me anymore, that it is a wonderful and noble profession. And I admire anyone who is able to do it as a lifelong career. And I had a great experience doing it. But there were other things that I was looking for in life. There were other things that I was hoping to experience and achieve. And so I made the decision in May to step away from my teaching job and started a business called the Uninterrupted Life. And as I have been reflecting on approaching this conversation, I just think it's very cool that your concept and what you're going for is very similar and aligned with mine. You know, the Uninterrupted Life and Becoming Unbound, which I love that title, by the way. And I just think they go nicely together. And so I think we're going to have a fantastic conversation along those lines. And how we met, I became a member of a podcasting group or a podcasting connecting group on Facebook. And you had made a post, written a little bit about yourself. I said, she's a former teacher. I should connect with her. We would have a great conversation. And so I reached out to you. We scheduled a session. We had a wonderful first meeting. And I am excited to continue that conversation now for your audience.
Yeah, I've been really looking forward to this conversation because you are the first other retired teacher. I always make a joke that I'm like, everyone talked about retirement, right? Like, oh, as a teacher, your retirement's going to be amazing. Like, stick with
Mhm.
it because the retirement is so good. And I feel like I'm like, we both went early to be retired
Yes.
teachers and look at the life that we're creating. It is all it's cracked up to be. We It's just not what people told us it would be.
Mhm.
So I'm super excited to be talking to you today because we have such similar stories. And it makes me feel like when we first started talking and you gave us me a little bit about you, I was like, oh my God, I'm not the only one that left teaching. I said there's part of me that sometimes feels bad
Mhm.
because oh, I don't know. It just the kiddos are wonderful, and like you said, we had a great experience,
Mhm.
and maybe there was something more to life. Did you feel that kind of guilt that was creeping in when you went to go think about leaving?
Um, I don't think that the way I would phrase it is, did you feel is I still feel a little bit of
Okay.
guilt that I am still moving through and moving past because I think, especially being teachers, we both recognize the importance of
Mhm.
having good educators, good and passionate educators in the classroom. And one of the things I am most proud of about my time in the classroom was my ability to share that passion, my passion for music and my passion for learning and becoming a better person with my students. And even now, I still call them my students, even though they're technically my former students. They still comment on what it meant to them to have someone that showed them what it was like to live a passionate life or to be passionate about something. And so there is still a part of me that feels that pang of guilt every now and then, but I think that comes from a place of still loving the art of teaching. And when I left the classroom, it sounds like you're in a very, or we're in a similar position. I still loved what I did. I loved being in the classroom. I loved working with my students, but just because you love it doesn't mean you have to sacrifice your whole life for it. And for
Mhm.
me, it came down to teaching became a sacrificial art or an act of martyrdom as opposed to a fulfillment of my personal fullest potential. And that was for me why I needed to leave. And there's definitely a little bit of guilt associated with that. But you're right. On the other side of this is a beautiful life that I now get to create each and every day that is really not comparable in a lot of ways to what my life was like as a teacher.
Yeah, it's an incredible experience to move through all of it. Like, and I think
Mhm,
it's important that we honor that little bit of grieving process, the guilt, the emotions that come up because whether you're leaving the teaching career or I've talked to some nurses, like
mhm,
whatever career it is that you're leaving, there's going to be a process to it. To like thinking the first thought of like, "Ooh, I think there's something else." To like, "Okay, if there was something else, what would it be?" And
mhm,
the next thought of like, okay, so if I'm actually going to leave the career that was like so, whether it was like sometimes I feel like there's an attachment to the nobility of a
mhm,
career, whether you are, in a classroom, like, influencing young minds, or you're a nurse saving lives, or you're a firefighter, or whatever it is, there is some nobility that, like, I
mhm.
think in these careers is hard to just ignore. And I think I don't want to say I was like like the word virtue signal comes to mind, but like I took a lot of pride in telling people that I was a teacher. And so now it was like, well, I have to tell people something that I'm something else. And like they don't just get to
Right.
be like, oh, yeah, like Carly the teacher or Coleman the teacher. And you kind of didn't have to say anything else. They were just like, oh, you're a teacher. Okay. That's all I need to know about you. Okay. That's
Well,
it.
right.
Did
And
you
I
feel
think that
that?
you're spot on with, like, that virtue signaling aspect that being a teacher, especially one that your students love and adore, is a very significant part of who we become, that we begin to attach ourselves with that persona and shedding that is,
Mhm.
like I said, I'm still very new to this, and there's still a part of grieving that I am finding that maybe I didn't allow myself enough time to fully process, but I did. I took steps. I knew that I was leaving for my entire last year, and I took preventative steps along the way so that I didn't have a complete mental breakdown. But shedding these parts of our identity that are no longer serving us, and the accompanying recognition that just because they're no longer serving us doesn't mean that they were inherently bad. It doesn't mean that they were not satisfying for a period of time. And I think for me, something that I felt a lot of guilt around when it came to leaving the profession was there are so many people that put up with it for 35 years, that make it to the end, and it almost feels like a letdown or like a failure in a lot of ways to not make it to that point, to not be that retired teacher who dedicated 35 years of his life to a high school. And in my particular case in music, has one last concert where all of my alumni come and sing, right? Like I don't get to have that moment, but teaching is one of the few professions, is like the only profession that something like that happens. We would not say that about almost anything, that if you want to spend 5 years, as an accountant, go ahead and spend 5 years as an accountant and then go do something else. That teaching is one of these strange professions that I think has inherently attached to it the longevity component that, you become a teacher and you're locked in for life, and breaking away from that after only 8 years, I think in a lot of ways felt like a failure, felt like a letdown, felt like, oh my gosh, why can't I make it these 30 years? But we would never tell our students that. We would never tell our students that they have to sacrifice their entire life for someone else. And so, why are we doing it? Why am I allowing myself to live a life that is not the life that I want to be living just because I'm providing a good service? And for me, that awakening to, I can provide that service. I can still be a light. Like, I am the light. I am the message that I need to take. That whether I am passionate in the classroom or out of the classroom, it doesn't matter. It's inconsequential that I can take that passion with me wherever I go. So for any teacher who is listening, that is maybe thinking to themselves that, hey, this isn't all it's cracked up to be, that you have the greatest skill set already that you can transfer into doing anything, whether that is starting a business or entering a completely new profession. And giving yourself permission to do that, I think, is a very important first step.
Wow. I'm having like revelations in this moment. So, first of all, I feel like our listeners are just thanking you for giving them that permission slip
Mhm.
because it is so true. And the teaching identity runs so thick and so
Yes.
deep
Mhm.
that I think there's a couple other professions that might maybe nursing, but like the identity of a teacher or
Mhm.
whatever identity you've attached yourself to, and I'll say this as like as an example, I just moved house, so I've been going through a lot of my teacher clothes and I'm letting them go
Mhm.
because I pick them up and I'm like, this I would first of all, I would never wear this now, but they're very
Mhm.
primary school like teacher outfits and
Yes.
I'm literally shedding and giving away
Mhm.
old pieces of my identity. But is it's so funny that like I talked about this on the podcast before, but like it's almost like this teacher identity was so all encompassing that I had to get to know who Carly was.
Yes.
And you're so right. Like you are the light. It's not just you, Coleman, as a teacher. It's
Mhm.
you, Coleman, as a human being with this amazing skill set that you can bring to every
Mhm.
possible position or career or path that you want to take. That's amazing.
Well, thank you. And I'm glad to be able to offer that to your listeners and hope that they feel like wherever they are, whether they're a teacher or a nurse or anything, that
Yeah.
you have the permission to do something else if you want to. And in fact, that's what I would encourage people to do. When we think about long term happiness is not found in the achievement of a singular goal, right? It is found in identifying smaller short-term goals that bring us that fulfillment and move us forward. And so if that means leaving your profession, you have the permission to do so. You have the permission on any given occasion to reinvent yourself and to more fully discover who you are, because who you are also changes throughout your life. That there was a person, and I'm sure same for you, that there was a Mr. Flintge. That's my last name. That was my teacher name, and there was a whole persona around Mr. Flintge, and that was my identity for a long time. And shedding that and separating myself, okay, what would Mr. Flintge do? What would Mr. Flintge say? What does Mr. Flintge want? And bringing that down to, what does Coleman want? What does
Yes.
Coleman want out of life? What would Coleman say? Or even sometimes it was, what would Mr. Flintge say to Coleman?
Oh, that's brilliant. Yes.
Mhm.
It's like even as a parent or as a teacher, like what would you tell your child? And I'm definitely of the perception that like I believe I would tell my child or my student to like go out and do something. If you are not
Yes.
happy with where you're at, change it. Like you
Mhm.
are the only one that can do that. Now, a couple things came up for me and I wanted to ask, did you have pushback from your friends, family, and stuff like that when you said, "I'm leaving teaching," or "I'm leaving my career"?
Weirdly, no.
Oh,
My students, and I don't know why this is the case, but my students, and I shouldn't say that I don't know why it's the case. I know why it's the case. And it's because from day one, I always told the students that I just wanted what was best for them, that I wanted them to be happy. And everything that I did in the classroom was centered around what is going to make them the best versions of themselves. And so
Mm.
when I let them know that I was leaving to start this new endeavor because there were other things that I wanted to explore, all they wanted was for me to be happy. And that took me a long time to settle with, that, grappling with feeling like I was letting them down, feeling like I was leaving them, abandoning them, all of these sorts of things, because my students were my life for so long. And in a lot of ways, they still kind of are, because I think about them way more than I should. But recognizing that they just want me to be happy, they just want me to live my best life, just like I want that for them. I would say the only person that maybe gave me a little pushback was my mother. And that is not, in a negative way. She's just a mother. She cares. She's like, well, are you sure? Have you thought this through? Kind of thing. But at the end of the day, she's in the same boat. She just wants me, it's same for both of my brothers, but they're both useless. So since I'm the favorite child, she just wants me, it is what it is. She just wants me to live a life that makes me happy every single day. And I think when I stepped into that, and when I stepped into the recognition that I get to continue being that example for other people in my life, that it is encouraging and it does make that transition a little bit easier. We think that we're letting everybody down, but if we think about it that way, sure, and that might keep you in the same position. But if you frame it from a perspective of, I now get to use my journey to inspire other people to live the best lives, whatever that means. I know that that's a really ambiguous kind of term, and we talk about it, or we throw it around a lot in the wellness community, but inspiring other people to live fully, wholly, and authentically by doing that in my own life is an awesome responsibility.
That's beautiful and so true. Like, if you are going to model anything,
Mhm.
why not model taking risk, taking leaps of faith, changing your life, and being the one in the driver's seat? Like, that's the model versus, like, oh, yeah, I'm just slugging this out till 60 and, like, I'm just going to hope that I don't die of a heart
Right.
attack by the end of it. It's like, that's not the model that I want to follow. And I don't think we should model that for our students or the next generation. And I like what you said, like, you took a risk, but I think the important thing there is, like, you told your students you were gonna leave, then you left, but that's a reversible decision,
Mhm.
right? Like, you could have tried out a new business, try to dip your toe into the entrepreneurial world, and at the end of the day, if it didn't work out or if it wasn't this, like, huge success, you could always go back and reinvent
Mhm.
yourself again. Like, it's not about how many times you fall down, it's about how many times you get back up and
Absolutely.
understand that these decisions that we make to change our career, to move countries, or whatever it is that
Mhm.
you believe is holding you back from your most free life, if they are reversible, then freaking go for it because you can
Absolutely.
always go back to teaching. Like, I always told that's what I told my mom. I was like, Mom, if this doesn't work out and I fail miserably, I'll just go back to what I do and
Mhm.
reinvent myself again.
I still got a master's degree in music
Yeah.
education if I need it. And something I would add to that, that I am approaching this entrepreneurial journey as less about the reversibility of the decision, or the action, and more focusing on, what can I learn through this
Mm.
experience? What am I learning about myself as I go through this, endeavor of entrepreneurship? And let me tell you, as you know, nothing will show you your demons faster than starting your own business and being an entrepreneur, which is a beautiful thing. And I am excited that I get to learn these parts of myself that maybe I would not have ever experienced if I would have stayed in the classroom. And I knew when I left that even if I did come back, and I do think that there is a part of me that would like to return to the classroom someday, that when I did, I would be a better version of myself for my students, for that this was not just an act of service to Coleman, that this was an act of service to my future students, to anyone who comes across my path, that I can show up as a better version of myself for them if, that is the case, if I go back into the classroom, or just more generally speaking, that this is a learning experience for me and I get the wonderful opportunity of digging really, really, really deep into who I am in order to make something like this work. And I think that that is a beautiful process, something that I would say everyone should go through, because you never know what's lying underneath the surface, good, bad, or otherwise. And you will never know until you take the journey inwards. And so, yes, this is an experience in entrepreneurship at one level, but more importantly, this is an experience in, answering that question you were talking about. What does Carly want? This is my opportunity to answer that question for myself. What does Coleman want out of life? Who is Coleman, and who does he want to be with however much time I have on this planet?
Yeah, why not explore and learn as much as you can in this precious little
Absolutely.
life of ours?
I think that's the
So,
teacher side of us saying, learn as much as you can. But I mean, that's true. That is what it is.
but that is we all go to school. We all
Hmm.
do that process of learning every type of learning that you could possibly do. Like, we all go to school. It's like such
Hmm.
an inbuilt human thing is to go and learn about
Hmm.
yourself and the world around you. Like, we are naturally curious beings, I believe, and like the way that our brains are able to take on new information is always incredible to me. So I wanted to ask about like the process of you figuring this out and starting this journey of entrepreneurship and just saying yes to leaving. Was there a
Hmm.
moment that you remember, or like can you describe the feeling of this I for me it was an epiphany. Maybe describe what was that moment when you were like, "Okay, I'm going to go do something else."
I My life changed on a giant rock, basically, was how that sounds. And it sounds very, I don't know, like spiritual Buddha, whatever. But I was out in Glacier National Park, and I had done the hike to Grinnell Glacier, which if anyone has not done that hike, I highly recommend it. It changed my life. And I remember lying there on a rock. We had hiked, I think on that particular day, this was at the end of a long road trip I was doing with a college buddy of mine, and we had hiked maybe 15 to 20 miles just in a single day, and we were just at the top. We still had to come back down. By the time I came down, I had to wrap my feet, because there were so many blisters on there. It was terrible. But I was up there at the top of this mountain and just laying, I'm pretty sure I was like spread eagle, just like laying on this rock as the sun was setting behind the mountain, looking at this glacial lake. And something in that moment awakened in me that said, there is more to this life than what I am experiencing right now. And I still struggle to figure out exactly how to word that phrase in a way that makes sense. But for anyone who's had any kind of spiritual awakening, it's that epiphany feeling of, I don't know what it is, but I know that there is more for me in this life than what I have right now. And that kick started for me this inner journey of figuring out what that next step looked like for me. And it took me, I would say, about a year and a half to come to the decision. Let me back up. It took me about a year and a half to accept what I already knew, which was that I needed to leave teaching. And it was about a year and a half of long conversations with myself and with mentors, and lots of journaling and reading and doing inner work, just to accept that about myself and to figure out what those next steps might be. So for me, my awakening moment happened on a giant rock about, 10,000 feet above sea level. But more importantly, it was the awakening inside of me, or that awareness that there was more out there, and that it was achievable, that it was attainable, not just the knowledge that it was out there, but that I could and deserved to experience it.
Ooh, keyword deserved.
Hmm.
Yes. And I think you bring up such a great point of how long it took you. I think for our listeners, like, we're not just if you are in the process, maybe you've had this awakening moment and you're like, okay, what do I do with this now? It's like, it's okay to take your time with it
Hmm.
because it's a big
It
knowing,
is.
that little whisper in your mind, and I sometimes I feel like it's my voice, but it's not my voice. I like to it's either God or my higher self, or
Mhm.
I don't know what it is, but whatever that voice is, it's correct. First of all, number 1, it's correct.
Always is.
And it's okay to not jump into your next thing. Like
Mhm.
my journey's same as you. I took my time. There was a lot of planning, a lot of investigation into what I could do, my skill set, trusting and like exercises and how to just trust myself.
Mhm.
But I think the key thing, and I'm so glad that you brought this up, is that take your time. Like
Yes.
there's no rush unless you're like, there's a decision that gets popped in your lap, then like take it and run with it. But I think it's really important that in the process of becoming unbound, we like take the time to
Mhm.
sit with ourselves, have conversations with others, get the support that you need. Rushing out into something doesn't, I don't know, feel like that's part of the becoming unbound script. It's really more about like getting to know who you are after
Mhm.
hearing these words or this download that you've had is like take your time. And
Mhm.
that's okay. You're going to get to the right path, but rushing into something is probably how this might not go so well.
Right. And I like to view it as vertical decision making versus lateral decision making, especially in context of a um like a career move. So for anyone that is maybe in the beginning process of thinking about, okay, maybe where I'm at right now is not where I want to be, I would encourage them to think about, okay, am I wanting to make a vertical change or am I wanting to make a lateral change? And I'll explain that. A lateral change is roughly same for same. Do I want to leave this job in my particular case at this school and go be, a choir director at a better school with more resources? Or do I want to move laterally? I think even changing professions can be a lateral move if depending on what your intent is. So if my intent is to just make more money, that's in my opinion just a lateral change. I could have gone, especially as a teacher, I could have gone into corporate education. I could have gone into corporate training practices. I could have completely shifted and done a 12-week course and became a graphic designer, work from home 4 days a week and make $90,000 a year like one of my very, very good friends of mine, but that's still a lateral change because the essence of what you're doing, which is exchanging your time for money, is the same, even if you're making more money. A vertical change was what I was going through, and it sounds like that's what you were going through as well, which is I do not feel like I am fully realizing my purpose in this life in the position that I'm in. And so, what I am looking for is how to achieve that at a better or a higher level. And for me, that was one of the things that held me back from leaving teaching for a very long time was I didn't want to leave to go be a financial advisor. I didn't want to leave to go be a corporate training person or to make PowerPoints for someone else. Like none of that felt right. It didn't feel interesting. It didn't feel like what I was quote unquote called to do. And we can talk all about the woo woo stuff, another time. But I am a purpose driven person. I'm a very passionate person. And I was not willing to sacrifice the fulfillment of passion that I was experiencing in my teaching life. I wasn't willing to give that up just to make more money. That did not seem like an equal exchange for me to give up feeling like I am making a positive impact in the world just so that I can have more money. Didn't make sense for me personally. And so for me, that was one of the first things that I had to discover or decide for myself. Am I looking for a lateral change, just making more money or being in a new environment? Or am I looking for a vertical change? And unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to look at it, vertical changes take a lot more time and preparation and calculation. I'm a very calculated person. And so, similar to you, I sat with it for a long time and I just waited and I listened and I was listening for or waiting for that feeling of okay, this is right, boom. And now I can move in that direction completely uninterrupted or uninhibited. But for me, I've got to wait for that moment. I have to sit and hold my cards to my chest until I'm ready to lay them all down. And so asking yourself, am I looking for a lateral change or a vertical change might be a really helpful question to answer for anyone that is in the process of becoming unbounded.
Wow. Yes. So I feel like that's do you want a great question too could be like, just do you want to trade a job for another job?
Hmm.
Or do you want, if you are really good at executing plans and projects and stuff, like, do you want to just keep executing?
Hmm.
Or is there like a visionary leader inside of you that wants to like step up into another level? Like I do
Hmm.
feel like there is a leveling up as to whether you start to work for yourself or whether you start to work for another entrepreneur and like become part of a team. That's another thing that I think people
Hmm.
could do. Like it doesn't always have to look like entrepreneurship, but I
Right.
do think you have to just differentiate between do I want this job or another job where I'm clocking
Hmm.
in. And that really has to do with like how do you define what you're like what you're trying to achieve. Like
Yes.
what is your goal? Do you want more time? Do you want just more money? Do you want yeah, like you said, just a change of environment? That
Hmm.
could be what you're looking for. Or are you going balls deep and trying to find your mission and purpose and become more aligned in this life? Like and all of those things are exactly right for where you're at.
Hmm. And I think in addition to that is whatever the answer is okay. That
Yeah.
if you want to be in a better environment where you're just making more money, that there's nothing wrong with that. I think that especially in the entrepreneurial world, that we are often fed this idea that everybody has to go out, quit their job, start a business, buy a bus or a sailboat, and sail around the world if you want to live a happy and fulfilling life, right? You have to quit your job in finance where you've been saving for the last 6 years and you can afford to not work for the next 4 years of your life and make Instagram videos and get really famous, right? That's the image. That's the image that we are fed. And there are people who just don't want that. And for me, especially, when it comes more directly to my coaching practice, that there are people who just want to feel better in their day to day life, but they don't want to radically change or in a lot of ways can't. If are a single mom and you've got 3 kids that you're trying to raise like my mother was, she couldn't just up and buy a sailboat or a bus and go do whatever she wanted. I mean, I guess in theory, yes, she technically could have. But the principle is, or the overarching message is that whatever your choice is okay. If you just want a new job, there's nothing wrong with that. And I don't think that anyone should feel badly if they just want to be in a new environment, if they just want to show up and have a better experience in their occupational life, that your occupation is only one small part of who you are. And if it fuels the rest of everything that you're looking for in life, then that's okay. I was listening to Scott Galloway on a podcast, The Diary of a CEO, which is a wonderful podcast that I listened to. I shouldn't say listen to. The episodes are way too long. I just listen to clips of it and go from there. But he was talking about the same idea that he came across a man who was a soapstone worker and just loved a soapstone because it paid for the rest of his life. And he got to have all of these wonderful experiences that you can have just a job that fuels the other things you are looking for. Not everybody has to do what I do and just quit and burn everything down and build from the ground up, which if that's what you want to do, fine, do that too. And if you fail, do it again. You have the freedom to choose what you are looking for in life.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. And not you don't have to quit your corporate job and become a
Right.
content creator.
Right.
Like that I feel like is so what the internet wants to tell you, or
Hmm.
like the people who have broken free and like they literally just quit their corporate job and then they become a content creator and they're
Hmm.
YouTube stars. And it's like that is one way to do it. And I think Becoming Unbound and the reason that this podcast exists is because I want to tell stories of all the different ways that we're
Hmm.
becoming unbound, and shifting careers could be the next best thing for you.
Hmm.
And it depends on what your goals are. So what I like to ask everyone on the podcast is what is your definition of freedom? And, in this shift that you made, what were you kind of going for in terms of more freedom from the previous teaching career that you had?
I love that question. And when I saw that on the list of questions that you had sent me, I just sit and stew on it for a little bit because I
Yeah.
was like, well, that's an easy word to define. But then thinking about what does that mean for me takes a little bit more thought. So hopefully I'll be able to articulate it, in a relatively concise way.
Okay.
For me, freedom comes down to choosing how to experience each moment in life. And I think
Mm.
sometimes we equate freedom with these grander images, this idea of, oh, I'll be free when I have $10 million in the bank, or I'll be free when I have this job, or freedom to me is being able to do what I want, when I want, how I want. And there's nothing wrong with any of those things. But at the end of the day, to me, freedom comes down to how do I want to experience this moment? How do I want to experience? How do I want to feel when I wake up in the morning? How do I want to feel when I go to work if I have a job? How do I want to consciously choose this lived experience that I have? Because we've, only got on average 80 to 85 years, just depending on your gender and depending on where you live in the world. And freedom does not come from trading that time for an external measure. Freedom is found, at least for me, in choosing moment by moment, how do I want my life to feel?
Wow, we have not had that answer yet. I love it. That's really cool. How do you want to feel? Oh, I resonate with that so much because
Mhm,
for like for as an example, being a teacher or a nurse, like, do you want to experience life where you are always like switching from fire to fire, emergency to emergency, doing this, doing that? Do you want to live a life where your nervous system is just
mhm.
on all the time?
Oh,
Or maybe you want to experience like let's say you just want to be like in a more monotonous kind of job, like on
mhm,
almost like where you're just doing something over and over again and your brain just gets a chance to relax. Like
mhm,
that was one thing for me where I was like, I just want to be able to like do my job
mhm.
and that's it. And, like,
And
have
that's it.
hours at a time where I just, like, do the work that I've been asked to do. And
Mhm,
teaching is so funny because like, that's not it at all. You are doing 101 things all the time. And so for me, like, if I'm answering that question of how did I wanna feel, because now I'm having this epiphany as you brought this
mhm,
up, that yeah, it's like it was very much about the feelings that I was
mhm,
having every day. I didn't want the pit in my stomach. I wanted to feel relief from that. I didn't want to have a nervous system that was like twitching out.
right.
And I think that's really cool. So, and even if you don't know what it is that you want or how you want to feel, you could always learn from what you're experiencing now and what you don't want.
Absolutely. That's for me was the first thing that I started looking at and answering that question of how do I want my life
Mm.
to feel? And thinking about like content creation is a great example for me. I am not a huge fan of creating video content, like, let me be more specific, video sales content for platforms like Instagram. It just doesn't feel right to me. And I always always approached it with a feeling of dread and not wanting to do it. I didn't like the product. I didn't like what I was putting out, and I just didn't like the act of creating it. And so for me, that was an indicator. Okay, this, maybe this isn't for you. If you don't want it to feel this way, how do you want it to feel? Well, I know it's not that. So let me move at the very least, in the opposite direction. And even if you don't know how exactly that is going to manifest, that's where we start. It's a lot easier, I think, to identify what we don't want in the world of our experiences as opposed to the infinite number of possibilities of what we do want. And I think part of that is the recognition that we don't give ourselves permission to answer that question. How many times as you were growing up did anyone say, how do you want school to feel? how do you want to experience math class, or what do you want to, what do you want this life to look like in your job? Nobody asks you those questions. We're almost made to believe that giving ourselves what we want is a luxury, and it's not. Not only is it not, but it also doesn't have to be, which are kind of two ways of saying the same thing but might resonate differently depending on where you are in life. But giving yourself what you want, that doesn't mean that you have to go out and eat tubs and tubs of ice cream and spend boatloads of money at, the casinos and the strip clubs. Like, what you'll find very quickly is that probably isn't what you're actually wanting there. And so then you begin that refining process of, okay, well, now I know that it's not that. What do I want? And asking yourself that about every aspect of your life. How do I want to feel when I wake up in the morning? How do I want to feel when I am in conversation with another amazing human being, who is weirdly halfway across, or in another country, right? You're in
Yeah,
Canada, correct? Right?
directly
How do I
north.
want to feel in this conversation? How do I want to feel in my relationships with people that I love? That's a great question that I love asking people, and, redefining that for myself, especially within the context of like technology. I was finding that technology was substituting for human experience, and that I was wasting time with my mother specifically, whom I love dearly and I only see a handful of times a year. And so I was like, why am I spending this precious time with my mother being consumed with my phone? And that's another awareness of, this is not how I want this relationship to feel when I'm engaged in that conversation or with that other person. This is what I want it to feel like. And answering that question, giving yourself permission to receive that answer, I think is a very important process in anyone's growth journey, whether you're looking for a career change or not. But being unbound by the things you don't want and releasing those shackles is what gives you the freedom that everybody is looking for.
Beautifully said. Yes, giving yourself permission. It's not selfish.
It
And
is
I
not.
that can apply to everything. Like just asking yourself that question, how do I want to feel when I eat my food? Or yeah, like you
Hmm.
said, like how do I want to feel when I wake up? I love that. Like what a great starting point
Hmm.
if you are at the beginning of like, okay, what do I do next? I figured out that that's not what I want to do. Take as much information as you can from that, and then it is, how do I want to feel? Well, and you'll most of the time be able to give yourself some really surprising
Hmm.
answers and things that are like from your inner knowing. Like I think one of the things that if I could give anyone advice, it's like you already know what it is that you're going to tell yourself. Like
Hmm.
it's already in you. And so if you could give someone a little, you've given so much advice already, but if there is another little tidbit that you could give, a piece of advice for someone, or maybe even like that version of you that was thinking all these things 2 years ago, what would that little piece of advice be if they know that there's something else out there for them?
It's kind of a hard one because it's not a fun one to listen to. And it's a piece of advice that has been a that is a conglomerate of influences of some of my mentors and my mother. And that is that everything happens as it should, when it should. And with that comes some very profound takeaways and some understandings. The first of which being, control is an illusion. That if we think we have any influence on the grand scheme of the universe, we are kidding ourselves. And that the universe has existed for 13.8 billion years. And when you break it down, everything that has happened in the universe, 13.8 billion years of events, had to happen exactly as they did in order for us to be at this exact moment. And the universe is inherent, by virtue of that, is inherently successful. If we want to use that, term of success, it keeps going no matter what. And so for us, when we adopt that or when we accept that, we realize, number one, the universe did not bring you here to fail. The universe is not going to let you fail because that's not the nature of the universe. And number two, it is the understanding that the path forward is being laid in front of us exactly as it's supposed to. That it's not about finding a path. It is not about, I don't even think it's creating a path. It is about looking down and saying to yourself, what is that next step? Where is the next brick being laid? And watching the bricks being laid in front of you, as opposed to feeling like, oh my gosh, I have to create this whole, new thing. No, that and something that my younger self got really caught up in a lot, feeling like I had to create everything from scratch as opposed to submitting to the universe. I hate that phrasing there, but it's the idea, and you can substitute universe for whatever you want, whether that's God, whether that's Buddha, whether that's, the stars, and you can substitute anything that you want in there. But there is something larger than ourselves that is directing the nature of the universe, and we get to experience that firsthand. We get the awesome opportunity. For all we know, we are the only beings in the entire universe that experience consciousness the way that we do, and we get that amazing gift to watch the universe unfold its plan for our life before our very eyes, and we get to live it. And so releasing that control, releasing that need to direct everything, and accepting that, yeah, maybe it would have been nice to have learned this 6 months ago, or to have started this a year ago, or maybe it would have been nice to go to a different college and study petroleum engineering, blah blah blah. You can spend all day long, pining over what coulda, shoulda, woulda been. Instead, I recommend, or I adopt an approach of, everything happened as it needed to bring me to this moment. And why am I? And the answer that we, or the question that we then ask is, why am I in this moment? What am I supposed to learn, do, or become in this moment that is the result of everything that has happened to me up until now?
Beautifully said. And I think, yes, like, and it's so brave of you that, like, you did just, you looked down and you were like, oh, there's a step. Like, you
Hmm.
just step forward. And this is that leap of faith, just knowing that, like, whatever's about to happen,
Hmm.
walking out into this, like, thing, and you're like, oh, well, I was about to take a step, and there's the brick that was,
There's the brick.
there it is. Like, there's the path. There
Hmm.
is no more right path than the path that you're on
Hmm.
right now.
I love that.
And I think it's just because, yeah, as you can always look back on your life and say, like, oh, wow, all of these things have happened for the reason, for a reason. So
Mhm,
what makes me think that anything would be different in the future, and it wouldn't be serving my highest good or a big lesson that I as a soul needed to learn
mhm,
on this earth? Like, everything is going, it's all in the evidence of my life thus far, and it's going to keep going until
mhm,
the end of my days, and that's something that you can trust. And I think that's why we get into these careers, because we're like, well, we're gonna get into this career and we're gonna go to school, and then we're gonna tick this box, and then you're gonna have a career, then you're gonna get a raise, and then you're gonna retire, and then you're gonna have a retired life, and then you're gonna
mhm.
die. And it's
Yep,
so control, it's based in control, but it
mhm.
gives us this security, and it's like, where is the life in that?
Yes, and
Yeah.
and, like, life is not a series of check boxes, and I think that we approach it that way, and when we pursue relentlessly a singular goal for our entire life, it's like, okay, what happens when you achieve it? If I wanted to be a conductor and I wanted to conduct Mahler 2, at Carnegie Hall, yeah, I spend my whole life doing that, and I might get the opportunity to do it once in my entire life. And it's like, that's what it was all for. I spent my entire life working tirelessly for 2 hours for a 2 hour experience. And for some people, maybe that is what they want. But life does not have to be a series of check boxes that all you're doing is checking this box, moving on to the next one, checking this box, move on to the next one. That the fun in life is in the ambiguity. The fun in life is looking down and seeing the next brick being laid. The fun in life is looking around and marveling at how everything, in my opinion, is inherently meaningless. Like, we attach so much meaning to so many things in life, and it's like, they don't mean anything. None of this means anything. So if we can put it simply, just enjoy it. You're only here for 80 years, at best. And for all we know, that's it. We don't know what happens regardless of what your religious beliefs tell you, nobody knows what happens when we die. And so, why are we going to waste the precious time that we have experiencing consciousness in this way, not having fun?
Yes. Yes, if you're not having fun, I do think that is when you're not that is when you're doing it wrong.
Yes.
That's the only
Yes.
time you're doing that I'll say something is wrong, is if you're not at least having some
If you're
fun.
not
W
enjoying it.
Yeah, while you're doing it. So, this has been amazing. I feel like we could keep talking. I would love to bring you back on the podcast because this has just been amazing. So Coleman, if people want to follow up with your journey or your offerings and they want to keep hearing you drop these amazing truth bombs and some really great permission slips, where can they find you?
Well, thank you so much for all of those kind words. And I would love to be on your podcast anytime you want. As you can probably tell, I could talk all day long about just about anything. And I would be glad to. That's probably why I should not start a podcast, because it might be dangerous for the world to just let me talk uninterrupted endlessly. So it's good. It's always good to have someone to keep my time frames in check. In terms of reaching me, the best place to reach me is through social media right now. I am in the process of building a website, but I can get that information later. My social media handle is Coleman. So my first name, Coleman, like the camping supplies, dot uninterrupted. That's on Instagram and Threads. Those are the two main platforms that I use. I also use TikTok at the period uninterrupted period life, which they can also follow along, or they can shoot me an email at Coleman at the uninterruptedlife.com. I am absolutely open. I work with people in one-on-one coaching sessions. I do group sessions. I have one-on-one intensives that are just isolated events that are 60 and 90 minutes long. There are lots of ways to connect and communicate with me, and anyone who is wanting to discover more about what the next steps in their journey might look like. I am honored to be able to offer any experience or wisdom that I've gleaned from my own experiences with entrepreneurship to help anyone in their paths.
Amazing. Yeah, you've been through it. So, or you're still going through it. And
Going
I
through
think
it.
that's
Oh, there's no been
beautiful.
through it. They're
Yeah.
still going through it.
Isn't that the truth about all of our lives?
It is.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time today. This has been so wonderful.
Well, I am so appreciative of this time. I've had a blast being on here, and I agree. I think that we have a great conversational chemistry that we can talk all day long about anything. And I think that that is beautiful and fantastic. It's been a wonderful conversation. And my deepest hope is that anyone who is listening has found some inspiration and some permission to go out and live the life that they truly want to live.
Thank you so much. All right, friends, that's a wrap on today's episode. I will put all of Coleman's information in the show notes below. If you loved this episode, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with a friend, like, subscribe, and let's keep inspiring ourselves, our people around us, our communities to live the life that they want to go out and live. And we're going to keep on becoming unbound. Friends, I will catch you on the next episode.